Hi, I'm Lulua Khazoom from the band Iraqis in Pajamas. The Middle East has been in the headlines, and so many people either are completely confused by what's going on in the Middle East or think they know everything when they only have one piece or a few pieces of the puzzle that is a very messy, complex puzzle. I'm going to share with you my thinking through song, poetry, and reading from my book, The Flying Camel, Essays on Identity by Women of North African and Middle Eastern Jewish Heritage. This book has been taught throughout the Ivy League and at universities nationwide, and the new ebook edition is going to feature celebrity global artist Aiwa. They are three Yemenite Israeli sisters. They have been a phenomenal musical sensation. They have taken indigenous Yemenite Jewish prayers and have put it to various kinds of music like reggae or dance music, and it has blown up on the charts. And they're going to be featured on the cover of the new edition of my book. You can pre-order the book now on Khazoom.com, click on shop, and I will be reading from that book just to give you some history about who are the Jewish people and what does it mean to be an indigenous Middle Eastern Jew, and how does that fit in with the idea of Jews that most people have, of people from Central and Eastern Europe. So I'm going to start off reading the poem that then became the song, and then I'm going to read to you from the book. Where you draw your timeline is a political act, because there was before that and before. What appears to be the effect today is actually the cause, if you go back far enough. But you lack the stamina, perspective, interest, brain power. And so you say, let's not complicate matters, when they are in fact terribly complicated, interwoven threads, tripping all over each other. And so you look at the present without actually seeing it, a small sliver of the whole, a distorted sampling. And it satisfies you because it fits your belief system, mirrors your reflection of the world. So you are convinced you have dug far enough and you know the truth. Where you draw your timeline is a political act, because there was before that, and before that, and before that. What appears to be the effect today is actually the cause, if you go back far enough. But you lack the stamina, perspective, interest, brain power, and so you say, oh, let's not complicate matters, when they are in fact terribly complicated, interwoven threads, tripping all over each other. And so you look at the present without actually seeing it, a small sliver of the whole, a distorted sampling, and it satisfies you because it fits your belief system, mirrors your reflection of the world. So you are convinced you have dug far enough and you know the truth. But what appears to be the effect today is actually the cause, if you go back far enough. Where you draw your timeline is a political act, because there was before that, and before that, and before that. Where you draw your timeline is a political act, because there was before that, and 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 before that. So if you liked my poem and my music, you can become a Patreon member at patreon.com/Khazoom. You will get weekly, original, unpublished poems, spoken word performances. You'll also get monthly journal entries where I first wrote the poems. You'll get my first stabs at songs. You'll also get previews, discounts. So check it out, patreon.com/Kazoom. Now I'm going to read to you from the hard copy original version of my book, The Flying Camel. The content will remain the same in the ebook, but the cover is going to be the band Aiwa, as I mentioned, which I'm super excited about because I love their music. The world has heard little or nothing about Jewish women from North Africa and the Middle East. For starters, few people know our names, Mizrahiyot and Sfaradiyot. A veil of invisibility obscures our history, or herstory, as well. Mizrahiyot are those whose foremothers lived in North Africa and the Middle East since Sarah, the Jewish matriarch, emerged from Mesopotamia, pre-Babylonian Empire, 4,000 years ago, crossing the Euphrates River into the Promised Land to the west. Her Jewish descendants lived on this land, first as the tribal nation of Israel, and then as the ancient kingdom of Israel, over a period of about 1,500 years. In 722 BCE, the Assyrians conquered northern Israel, using tactics that forced the Israelites to flee and scatter throughout the region. In 586 BCE, the Babylonian Empire, ancient Iraq, conquered Yehuda, Judah, the southern region of ancient Israel. Babylonians occupied the land and exiled the Yehudim, Jews, as captives into Babylon. Some 50 years later, the Persian Empire, ancient Iran, conquered the Babylonian Empire and allowed the Jews to return home to the land of Israel. Though offered freedom under Persian rule, most Jews were daunted by the task of rebuilding a society that lay in ruins, and they remained in Babylon. Over the next millennia, they either stayed where they were or migrated to neighboring lands in the region, including the land of Israel, which centuries later the Romans renamed Palestina, or they migrated to countries in Central and East Asia. Sfaradiyot are women descending from the line of Jews who chose to return and rebuild their homeland after the Persian Empire conquered the Babylonian Empire. About half a millennia later, the Roman Empire conquered ancient Israel for the second time, massacring most of the nation and taking the bulk of the remainder as slaves to Rome. Once the Roman Empire crumbled, descendants of these captives migrated throughout the European continent. Many settled in Spain, Sfarad, and Portugal, where they thrived until the Spanish Inquisition and expulsion of 1492, and the Portuguese Inquisition and expulsion shortly thereafter. During these periods, the Christian governments either burned Jews alive, forcibly converted them to Christianity, or forced them out of the country. Jews who fled settled predominantly throughout the Mediterranean regions of the Ottoman Empire, which was Turkish, as well as Central and South America. The Sfaradiyot who fled to North Africa and Middle Eastern lands merged with the Mizrahiyot, Jewish women whose families had been living there for thousands of years. In the early 20th century, severe violence against Jews forced communities throughout the region to flee once again, arriving as refugees predominantly in Israel, France, the United Kingdom, and the Americas. In Israel, North African and Middle Eastern Jews were the majority of the Jewish population for decades, with numbers as high as 70% until the mass Russian immigration of the 1990s. We are now half of the Jewish population. Throughout the rest of the world, we have a strong presence in metropolitan areas: Paris, Brooklyn, Montreal, London, Mexico City, and Los Angeles. So again, people know so little or nothing about Jews indigenous to the Middle East and North Africa, and yet we are the linchpin to understanding the relationship between Arabs and Jews and the Middle East conflict and the current wave of violence. So if you'd like to get educated on this, you can pre-order a copy of my book. Again, it's going to have Aiwa on the cover for the ebook, and you can do that as kazoom.com. Click on shop and you'll find the link for the book. If you're interested in my poems and my music, you can become a Patreon member, where I'm also going to be putting the lyrics to the song I just sung, and I will make that post accessible to the general public. But if you'd like to get weekly poems and music and so forth, you can become a Patreon member. And if you find value in this video, please share it with your followers. Feel free to comment if you have any questions, any comments you'd like to make about the video. I do respond to those. If you would like to bring me for a music performance, a spoken word performance, a reading from my book, you can reach me at kazoom@kazoom.com. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next time.